feeds the fire in us. Fans alive, we unite under the stadium lights. Every team, every score, we always hunger for more. Friday nights and Sunday games, we know all the biggest names. Huddle with the crew we trust. Football feeds the fire in us. Fan day mornings feeling alive. Jerseys on, we're ready to die. In the fan zone, we'll come on. Let's cheer loud, let's stand tall. Back and forth, the stories fly. Who's the best? Fans can't lie. Touchdowns, tackles, we discuss. Feel the rush. Come join us.
Hey, and we're back for the second edition of this 2025 season. Back, Tim. Welcome back again, and we've got the legend with us today, Gary Compton. How have you been?
Been good, guys. Man, that music right there got me fired up. I feel like I could maybe have a couple more plays, suit up, and run out of the tunnel, huh?
Oh man, I'll tell you what, AI is a wonderful thing.
Right?
So, Tim, how are things? How'd you enjoy the
They're doing
week?
good. They're doing. I'm gonna second to what Gary says. Second week in a row, man. You guys this is banging my head, man. That's a banger. I mean,
I spend the next day or two with it just constantly running in my head after we do the shows.
That's funny.
it's good stuff
So-
though. But I mean, obviously we're coming off of week one, and we had Steve Titus last week, and we have Gary this week to explain a few things that maybe fans will have about what they saw on the Evergreen broadcast or on the national television broadcast over on Vice. And Gary, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that the first ever live Vice sports broadcast?
Yes, it was. That was one of the big things that we wanted to do with Vice. Vice approached us with that partnership. They were going live with sports and everything. And Jerry and them, Jeff and Chris and them did a great job getting that contract and, that partnership done. And first game ever last night, Southwest Kansas versus Washington there. We had, Ari and Said, who, go back years and years for us and love broadcasting our games, love what we're doing, love what we do. And it's just, great to have those two guys, they're broadcasting the game for us last night.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of funny that, this being the first ever live sports for Vice kind of is a throwback. If anybody remembers arena football history, I think the original AFL had the chance to do it on the early days of Fox Sports, if I remember correctly. It's kind of cool that, taking advantage of this. And did it remind you of the TNN days there, Scott?
That was a little before my time, but I do remember it being on TNN.
TNN, Eli Gold. There were some Tuesday nights. I remember they would do it, and it was almost like NASCAR. You get the Tuesday night deal on TNN. So yeah, Tim, that's way back. That's way back, right? As we leveled off and continue to grow with it. But yeah, the TNN days were good as well.
At TNN, did Eli Gold, Jill Arrington. I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's.
I
agree.
I haven't heard. Is Eli back with the Cats this year?
I don't know if Eli is doing their play-by-play or not with that. I would assume he is because, with Jeff and that group there, with Greg Pogue and those guys still there, I would think he would still be doing that, but I'm not 100% sure, what his plans are this year in Nashville.
So we got homework now, sounds like.
Yeah, right, right.
Now, Gary, I mean, I know you've spoken with Scott before. I know you've been on other shows before too, but quickly, give everybody a quick synopsis of what you are doing for the AF1 this year.
Okay, not a problem at all. So obviously, my role is Director of Football Operations. I work on the day-to-day side of all football. I'm dealing with all the coaches. I'm dealing with players. I'm dealing with contracts, transactions, fines, issues. Also dealing with referees and our director of officiating. So everything that's, as I always say, in the confines of the walls that are football, I deal with. And it's kind of, I really enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun, especially now that we're in season. It's very, very active. A lot goes on. You definitely got to stay on your tiptoes, just like it would be if you're watching a game or you're going to miss something. So I make sure, try to stay on there, stay on point with everybody. Just talk to my coaches each and every day. Find out what's going on, find out the good. What can I help with? I'm a resource for them and everything, because obviously I want to make them succeed. We want to make the league succeed. We want to utilize everything that we have to make this thing continue to grow.
Now, obviously, it's a huge difference for you, this year versus last with the AFL versus AF1 now. There have obviously we're now within technically week 2 of the season itself, but everything is as perfect as it can. Isn't necessarily as perfect as it can be. I know that for a change, that I think Jerry Kurz was on site at the game for the national broadcast game. I know you were on site in Corpus Christi. Try to explain to some fans who may have not followed the AFL last year, how much of a difference is it this year, being that there seems to be a little bit more of an HQ that really does care about the game this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that obviously, and we know what all happened in the past, and we moved on to this thing, and we really wrapped our arms around this, with Jerry and Jeff Fisher and Christy and myself and kind of the front office people. This is ours. We want to make this thing ours. And as you said, boots on the ground. Jeff Fisher, was at Hulk Hogan's deal with our new partner too. Okay, Real American Beer on a Friday night. Okay, and then was at Southwest Kansas game last Saturday. All right, and then was in Oregon last Saturday night. Okay, in Washington last night. Jerry Kurz, our CEO, was in Washington last night. I was in Corpus Christi for the game as well. So we want to make sure that we're at these markets that we can help however is needed, because we want to make them successful. We want to do everything we can for them and show them, that, hey, we're right here with you. Whatever you need, you let us know. And I think that's a lot different. If I'm an owner and I have someone from the league right there and got their sleeves rolled up right with me, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is a great partnership that I have. Instead of just, you pick up the phone, well, you should have done this or that, and that's not what we're about. We're about getting out there, making sure things go well, making sure everything is great, and continue to make this thing grow.
Where people were looking at the games themselves and they talk about boots on the ground and stuff like that. And some people did bring up that there seemed to be some hiccups in Corpus Christi for their game. I know, as people know, it was originally supposed to be the game of the week, but it was the other game was flexed. Can you comment on what people saw in Corpus Christi and what they felt was a slight modification, at least this week, to the arena football game in arena?
Yeah, like I said, we're trying to help teams grow every week. I was there. There was a concert the night before. There were some logistical issues, okay, with things, with the people in the arena and all of that. We had to make sure we had some way to get the game to be played, okay? And as you know, when we talked about it, I was in charge. I was helping. Coaches were helping. Front office people were helping. Players were helping. everybody knew how important it was to do this. And we got the nets up and all of that. I had to, talking with Jerry, we had to make a call at some point in time. When do we cut it off, to make sure safety number one, nets are hung, they're secured, players can get out, teams can warm up, we can kick off at 5 o'clock. And, we made that decision. Everything's good there now. They know what's expected. They know what has to be done now. The arena people do as well. So, when you tune into Corpus Christi in 2 weeks, Salina will get a chance, a revenge game, to go back down there and play them again. You know what? All nets will be up, place will be nice, and all of that would be good to go. And I think that's what's important. Again, as we talk about, boots on the ground and everything, and helping everybody out any way that we can. And I was thankful I was there and be able to do that.
So one of the things I noticed that, honestly, besides the nets, that stood out to me with Corpus was the walls. The walls were, for the most part, blank.
Mm-hmm.
That's not usually a good sign. Have they reached out to try to help with gathering local sponsors? Was it just they're not ready and they didn't have the boards up or the ads up? Or
and again to that as well, they had the boards up, okay, and everything. They had their sponsors, their vinyls for that. Just wasn't enough manpower to get everything done when things needed to be done. We had to focus on what was important. Okay. End zones. Okay. You saw the end zones look pretty good. Center field looked pretty good, right? Just wasn't enough manpower in the day to get everything done. But you know what? We'll continue to work through and all of that. The other side of the arena, okay, the walls had all the sponsors on them. Okay, just didn't get enough to get around and all of that. But again, everything will get all cleaned up. We'll move forward with it. They'll be good to go, and continue to make this thing happen.
That's a good sign, because, like I said, last year I think it was Minnesota?
Yeah.
Was it Minnesota? Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the blank walls. And we knew that was not a good sign at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We knew something wasn't going right there. So the ads were there. It just wasn't on the TV side.
Right. Exactly. Correct.
So that makes me feel a lot better, how they're doing down there, for sure.
I mean, it's, from what we saw in the arena itself, and maybe people don't know, I mean, we've posted, there have been stuff that's been posted about when it comes to turnaround, and, they'll look at how the time lapse for turning around an arena. I think people may tend to forget how long it may take to turn around an arena from a concert the night before to a sporting event the next day. We're not talking San Jose, we're not talking Montreal, we're not talking, the big cities that have NHL teams, et cetera, or NBA teams. So it sounds like, as I said, it was, as I said, all people, all hands on deck, but it was just a matter of trying to get everything ready for just the game itself, rather than, I guess you could say they ran out of time.
Yeah. And one thing to it too, for that arena, the new operations group and all that, they were new people. Okay. They had not done this before. And we all know there's a learning curve there, but everybody got involved with it. They know the expectations. Like I said, we had the game played, did that and everything. It was an exciting game and all of that. And we'll continue to move on. And, like I said, make sure everything's correct as we move forward and grow each and every week.
Yeah. I will say that the craziest conversion that I ever saw was I went to a game in Dallas, and we had to move the game up to noon because they had a Mavericks game that night. It's the Lakers at 7. So we had our game, till about 2:30 or so. They skipped the autograph session. Only game I've ever been to where they skipped an autograph session. Got everybody out of the building because they had to pull up get rid of the nets, pull up all the turf, pull out the extended bleachers for the basketball seating, get all that set up to open the doors at 5:30 or 6 for the basketball game that night. I couldn't even imagine how they pulled that one off.
Yeah.
That'd be brutal.
That's some good people right there. That's for sure. Because like you said, we know how long it takes, with all of that and everything.
Well, and it's harder than even hockey. Hockey, you put boards over the top of the ice and pull out your bleachers, you're good to go. This, you actually have to roll up all that turf and
absolutely, and have it, and have all that stuff try to come in and everything else. So,
it's a good example for me too. Last year, I was at one of the Firebirds games, and the next day was a Firewolves game. just like Scott said, they kicked everybody out of the arena early. So they, even though they were just technically changing over the turf, they'd changed the turf and removed the nets. So it's like and that was a short turnaround too. I think that game was a 1 p.m. game, if I remember correctly, the next day. So, it's a small arena, sure, but you got to have the manpower in order to do it. But
Absolutely. And I think in the logistical issues of it too, like you said, in the time frame and all of that, everything's got to stay on time, because if anything gets thrown off, but like I said, they got it corrected, they got it done, and hey, we'll be good to go.
Excited to see the next game there for sure. I think that's
absolutely
what it looks like for everybody. I know I was reading one fan was a little disappointed because he bought tickets in the end zone, hoping to see some action, and everything was on the opposite side from him. And it's like, I feel you. I'm an end zone guy myself. I love sitting in the end zone seats.
Right.
It should be better this next time around. So
absolutely.
There wasn't. All arenas, it seemed this week, 2 of the 3 games, really, when it came to the arenas, there may have been some sort of hiccups themselves. I know we were post show, we were talking about what was happening over in Oregon. It's a different type of arena there, really, isn't it, Gary? Because the roof is smaller. The way they hang the net system is completely different, because that's the first time I've ever seen the net system put up that way, but it worked. But again, they themselves didn't have, everything wasn't going according to plan in Oregon either, was it?
No, it wasn't, and again, unfortunately, they were figuring out how to do it. They decided they were gonna go one way, but then they started playing both ways and all that. Then we would kick into the nets and everything. The dimensions of the nets, like you said, it was interesting because it was different and had never been hung that way before. But again, like I said, Steve Titus and Jeff were there, hands-on, helping get things done, getting it all set up. Because as I told you guys and everything else, the most important thing is to get this set up and play the game. Okay, we want to play the game and all of that to bring the excitement out to the fans, because that's what fans paid to see. That's what people are tuning in to Evergreen to see, and that's the important thing. We can correct all the little things and all of that to make things better. I don't know anything, as you know this too, Tim, I don't know anything that's ever been done where it's all perfect, especially in this game, okay? And I go all the way back to 1987 when it first started, up until, when I came in 92 and the hiccups and a lot of things that happened. But what we do is we correct those mistakes. We help be successful, put them in a great situation, and let the organizations move forward and be successful with that. And that's what it's all about.
And I think you're going to see the comparisons last year, they have to come just because of what last year was. But I think that's where you're seeing a big difference is, one, we're hearing from the leadership from the league.
Yep.
They're actually saying, hey, this wasn't right. We get it. And we're committed to making it better as soon as possible. Last year it was radio silence. And so far, that's been a lot of the feedback I think we've already gotten just with the first episode alone. And then now here that the transparency this season is so much better than what we had last year. And it's appreciated.
Yeah. And in all honesty, it has to be, because what good does it do to hide, right? You talk about it, you discuss it, and you make it successful. I mean, look at last night with the Vice TV game, Washington and Southwest Kansas. Beautiful setup, great crowd, exciting game and all of that. And, and that's what we want each and every week. And like you said, we'll get there. We'll get there to that. And, I always say everybody's got critics. Okay. As a former coach, you always used to tell everybody keep everything inside your house. Don't listen to the outside noise. Okay. That's how I operate. I think that's how we operate. We keep everything in house. Don't worry about the outside noise. We know what we have to do to be successful and make this a great product.
And even to talk about transparency, is that even with the slight hiccup with 2 of the teams not receiving their jersey, a statement was put out. It was mentioned last night specifically by Ari a couple of times on why Washington wasn't wearing their normal normal uniforms. But it was got to be a part of the conversation itself. Said chimed in too, but it's as you were saying, Scott, about transparency. At least there was a statement put out by the provider of the uniforms,
Hmm.
and as they said, it will be fixed. And at least they said specifically, it was only two teams. It was
Yeah.
only two teams that currently were having that issue this past week. And going forward, I can imagine we've only heard. I'm sure, Gary, you've seen potential pictures of what the uniforms are going to look like for Albany next week on this coming Friday for TV. I can only imagine because from what I've seen so far, at least of the new jerseys, I'm quite impressed. I really,
Hmm.
I'm a uniform guy, so I'm quite impressed really from what I've seen so far, and I can only imagine what Albany's and the other teams that are going to debut next week, what they're going to look like. So.
Well, and the thing of it is with that too, and Triple S obviously put out that statement, and union strikes, whatever it may be, labor, okay, UPS, obviously, whatever it is. But like you said, I will tell you, those uniforms are wow. I haven't seen a lot like that. When I got to firsthand when I was down at Corpus Christi, go in the locker room and see all of what Corpus Christi had, and they've done a great job with it and everything else, and everybody's getting their stuff, and we'll be good to go. And it's going to be neat because everybody's got multiple sets of uniforms that they can utilize and wear, and that's what we want to do. As a player, you want to make a big splash, and you want to be the Oregon Ducks and things of that nature and all that. But it would be exciting to see what Albany comes out in on Friday night.
I will admit, Corpus Christi was very Toronto Argonauts-esque.
Yes. I started saying you probably like that, huh?
No, I don't like Toronto, remember?
Montreal. You're a Montreal guy, right? See, there you go. So you're the Salina colors, right? There you go.
Colors, exactly.
No, and I gotta say too, having the company put out that statement, I think actually meant a lot. As opposed to the league's just saying this to cover their own butts, but having it come directly from the company, I think added a lot of weight to that statement for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
One of the things too that we noticed for really for week 2, and we talked about this pre-show itself, and you said that we could ask you about it. It was a game. Well, really, week 2 of the new game balls that are made by Big Game USA. They're also known by what's the other name? They're known by 2 different names. I keep getting them mixed up, but it's a Team Issue. They're also known by Team Issue. Gary, you're mentioning that we could ask you about this. What was the process on this? I mean, because we've seen before where over the years some prototype balls have come out of what they wanted them to look like, but it never made the cut or stuff like that. Same thing that happened in 2019 when the AFL rebranded at that time. We saw some of the different prototype balls and the how they went through the process and getting what they came out with. How was the process with the company, and how did the league finally decide on the game balls that they're playing with in 2025?
So obviously, when we had our league meetings down in Chicago back in September, October, we had all the vendors come down as we could see what a lot of people were wanting to present. And obviously, Big Game's been doing footballs for years, and they had done arena balls arena footballs in the past. And Jerry had a great relationship with Josh Ellis and all that. So they came in and they brought in about 4 different types of footballs. Balls were passed around, balls were handled. We discussed them with the owners, and then we took the owners out, kept the coaches in. We discussed it with the coaches, and then we came up with, okay, this is the type of ball we want. Okay, now we need a design, right? So we leave the design kind of to Jerry and Josh and them, and they came up with that design that we had. And then we were like, we want to put that team logo on the ball. But however, what's more important is we want to have a sponsor, okay, a league-wide sponsor. And Transfinder came on board for us. We have the Transfinder logo on the football. And then also on there with the team logo, if a team has a sponsor that wanted to sponsor the footballs for the year, that sponsor logo went on it. And it's the authentic, ball. If you take it and you look at it, it's, as we always say, it's the, the UFL, the AF1, the NFL ball, they're all like that with unique twist to it. And, we came up with that, got them done and everything, and got them out, and they've been great. They're the all leather football. They're not a composite ball that they played with in the past. They're not, I say toy balls, okay, that you play with and all that. It's a natural, it's a real leather football that you're playing with and all that, and it just brings back the uniqueness of what this game was, okay, with a new twist to it, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, you can't have a game ball as you were alluding to. You can't have it's not a real game ball if every one of them has a barcode on it. So
Correct, right? Absolutely.
There's been some folks in chat talking about the jerseys. I don't know if you'll necessarily know the answer to this, but do you know if the teams are all going to have names on the jerseys, or is it just going to be blank or team names?
No, I believe they'll have names on them. Okay, and everything. Again, with what had transpired and what had happened, we're worried about getting the uniforms there and making sure we have them and get them out. Okay. Now that all that's done and that's all settled down and everything, they're in the process. Everybody's in the process of putting names and all that. The teams this weekend, everybody should have their names on and all of that and be good to go. So it's, as I always say, it's baby steps with it. I don't think a lot of people understand what goes into putting names on jerseys or getting nameplates or doing all of this, that, and the other. When you're traveling and you're doing everything, there's a time, there's a time frame in there. With everything. So we'll get that taken care of. We'll get that done. But I appreciate the comments and the questions on that because, you as a fan, you want to know, you want to, hey, I don't want to know who 82 is. I want to call 82 Johnson. If I don't know who he is, I don't want to have to look at my program. And I get all that and everything. But yeah, we're getting that taken care of as well. And, have the names and all of that on the back of the jerseys.
I'm sure it'll help as Arian said next week too, because I know that
Right.
again with them with Washington having to use temporary uniforms, I can only imagine it because you talk about what it goes through, what I'm sure what these the equipment managers go through because if you look at week 0, both those teams had to deal with covering up other league logos, having to deal with other things like that. So it was a learning process, I'm sure. And as you were saying there, Gary, it was just about getting these guys and getting the teams on the field, getting the games played, getting them actually on the league streaming service, or whether it be Vice, but making sure the games are there, they're played safely, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I tell everybody when you see your team in these uniforms and you're going to be like, wow, because like I said, they have multiple sets. You think about way back in the day, we had a dark set and a white set. You know what I mean? Some of these teams have went to different extremes, and I'm not going to put too much out there with what's going on, but it's going to really, really make it unique and make a loud statement for, what we stand for with that. And and showcase that most definitely.
Yeah, we did know last week. Steve Titus did tell us about his. He gave a quick sneak peek, so we do know about their switch to a black home jersey, and I'm curious to see their gunmetal gray jerseys. I really am, and they've gone back to the old school. I was going to ask you that about that, Scott, because what did you think of Billings's very simple retro-ish helmets that they went with?
When he described them, I was like, I don't know about that, but I liked it. It's nice and clean, and in the mess of guys getting hit in piles, it's nice to know who is who. My first thought was there was a story about John Madden and how he was calling a game, and they're like, how did you know who was? He's like, if you look right there on the hip, there's their number, and only John Madden was able to pick that one out. Right. Whoever he was working with at the time was like, I didn't catch that. That was brilliant. So just that kind of thing where you could pick up who the player is instantly. You don't have to have that perfect shot of the front or the back to see what number that is, or to see it on the side of their helmet's nice. I like that.
Well, and it's different too, like you said with that. And, with that stripe system and all that, you could peel the blue stripe off and you could have it white, black, white. It gives a different look to it, right? Or you could just pull one number off, slap a state, so you can do it, as we all know with how helmets are nowadays and all that, it kind of gives that whole like you said, very clean prestige, that Penn State, Alabama look to it, and all that. But I thought that was a brilliant idea that they did with that.
But before we talk about the games this week, because I know that some of our listeners want your opinions on the games themselves too, and stuff like that. Uh, Obviously, what are your thoughts on the very first broadcast for Vice? Because maybe it's possible that many fans don't know what the actual process was when it came to the whole partnership between AF1 and Vice. I was wondering if you could give a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, and we're obviously proud to be on Vice and all that. I think it's a great opportunity for us. Like you said, Vice is going into now doing live sports, and to be able to be that first live sports game on there. I thought it was great. Christy McEwen, who's worked with us for years, she took a snapshot picture that she was looking at on Vice, and they had in the left corner Arena Football Countdown, 5 hours, 23 minutes, 36 seconds, which I thought was really, really cool. The things that they were doing leading up to that, and everything. And then I thought, the intros and all of that were great. Like we had talked about, having Arian said, two of the, I say, household names and the figures of arena football that have been doing this for years, I thought was great with the broadcast, and then we have Sophie Gutierrez, who's our on the field reporter, that's handling things with us this year and all of them, having her down there. I thought it was great for the first game, for the kickoff and all of that. I thought we did a really, really good job with it.
So the quality of all the streams was excellent. I didn't notice any buffering, any. That's whether the camera angles were the greatest at times, maybe not, but the actual stream itself has been flawless so far this season, which is nice change.
Right, and obviously, like you said, in the streaming service Evergreen now, who we're utilizing, and who's one of our partners as well. I think they've done a great job with that, with the streaming portion of it. And everybody always likes to, when there's other competitors and things going on, everybody wants to watch and everybody wants to categorize, and put things and all this and the other. But I'm going to be true and I'm going to be honest with all of it. I think our streaming services and everything else set us apart completely from anybody whatsoever and all that. And I think Evergreen's done a fantastic job, and our teams and our production crews have done a great job in, putting these on so far this year.
I was quite impressed with the graphics package, especially for the broadcast. It's great what they've done for Evergreen also. And I will admit, and one thing I had noticed specifically is that, sometimes when you see some of these games that are on a streaming service, so it's kind of a limitation, which sometimes these arenas do when it comes to how many cameras. One thing I noticed specifically about the broadcast for Vice is that they had a main camera on both sides of the arena. So they are able to use them for even though it wasn't utilized that much when it came to instant replay, because it really wasn't that much major instant replay in the game, but there was some. But end zone cameras and a camera on each side, it can just make a hell of a difference when it comes to the type of game that can be broadcast and can be shown to the fans on TV.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that's great because, we all know when you're doing that and you're doing the live TV and all, the camera angles are important, and having the number of cameras are important, with that. So I know, we have production meetings every week. Christy and Jerry and all the production crews, they have their meetings to make sure we have everything set up, everything good to go, for that broadcast to go flawlessly.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned earlier that Vice reached out to the league. And it shows that they're excited about this product, that not only do they reach out to the league, but they are putting that countdown up there for hours leading into this.
I
it just shows
that.
that they're bought in. They want this to be a thing, and that's a valuable partnership as that continues to grow.
Absolutely. And, not only with Vice, and I'll give you a quick story with Evergreen. So, another partnership of ours, National Scouting Combine, that, we've partnered with to be able to utilize to have, an avenue of players. They did a big scouting combine kind of all-star game down in Florida. that we were at. And Evergreen was there with us for 3 days, and we got to do so much footage with not only the players, but kind of behind the scenes with these players. Kind of a couple of them that we were interested in, and they would follow and they would interview and do some things. And, it was just great. So, there's a lot of content, a lot of great stuff happening. I know Adam Pelletier, our director of communications, has done a fantastic job with all the media people and all of that so far. Everybody thinks, we don't have this big office, we don't have this big office staff. There is very few of us, and everybody wears multiple hats. Everybody's helping each other out because everybody has a passion for it, and everybody wants to do whatever we need to do. Like I said, I'll continue to say, to make it grow, make it become the elite. I don't think anybody gets into anything to do it halfway. You know what I mean? If you're going to get into something, you're going to do it. You're going to do it fully, and you're going to make sure you make a statement when you do it. And I think that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I love the broadcast, and hopefully it'll continue. I can only imagine, because Scott, I think, I've been to MVP Arena many a times in Albany. I can just imagine the cameras that they're going to have for the game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the most cameras they use in a Vice game this year, unless Billings, except for Billings. I better say something before Steve Titus comes at me. So there are. I don't know if you'll be able to answer them, Scott. I know there are some. Before we get to the actual action and what Gary thought about the play on field this week, I know there are a couple of questions there that you may want to highlight. Maybe Gary might be able to chime in on. I don't know if he will be able to on some of these, but I don't know if you want to highlight some of these. Go ahead.
And I also want to suggest too, especially to Josh and Ed, that check out last week's video. Steve Titus actually addressed these things very directly too. So, but it'd be great to get Gary's thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, just talking about here, we want to look at a market where a market's going to be successful, right? I mean, it's, everybody wants to be in the big market cities and everything. And, and you have some of those. I mean, we have Nashville. Nashville's a big market. It's a big market city, but we've also have Dodge City. Okay. That's a small market. Okay. Or Billings, that's a small market, Everett, Washington is, a pretty good size area and all of that. So we have a mix with all that, but you don't just go because it's a big market and say, oh, I'm going to this market because it's going to be successful. Jerry and Jeff and Steve, and our whole management group, they do a great job in evaluating who wants to come in and be a part of this. Okay. What market is it? What are we looking at with that? What are all the demographics, and everything else? So as it grows, and it will, okay, and we want to maneuver to all the big ones, but you have to crawl before you walk, before you can run. Okay, so you got to move up there, and that's what we'll do.
And then anything you want to add to the Orlando situation?
I'd rather not chime on it. It is what it is at this point. There's two sides to every story and all of that. And, it's unfortunate Orlando's not with us, but, we'll move on and we'll continue to, have our season here in 2025.
And like I said, Ed, Steve Titus addressed these things pretty directly last week. So definitely check out that video from last week. He pretty much quotes emails he had. So,
yeah.
And then Dave Williams asked, Dave Williams asked earlier about game stats. How soon can we expect those?
We just had, you think about it, it was Saturday night, Sunday night. Okay, everybody's working and all that. I know Adam's working on getting those game stats posted, getting that updated, and everything else. We try to have a quick turnaround on that to keep, everybody up to date. Because we all know, there's betting, there's fantasy, and all of that. Things got to be updated. So Adam does a good job with that. I know he's probably listening, or he's listening to me right now and everything. So
he is. He's been texting. So
yeah, right. He'll get those up and then get everything accurate there on the website.
Obviously, looking into week one of the 2025 AF1 season, for you, Gary, what were the biggest takeaways in terms of the on-field play?
I tell you what. The Corpus Christi game was a shock to me. Okay. I really thought, Salina being kind of inexperienced and all of that, Corpus Christi being new, you really didn't know what to expect. That was a shocker. Now, I know Coach O'Neill very well. I know the way Coach O'Neill is. And, he will make sure that he's got his troops ready to go back there, in a couple weeks. But that kind of surprised me. Southwest Kansas looks solid right now.
Yeah.
They really, really do. I know Coach Thomas does a great job with that team. And, Coach Thomas kind of plays a little bit different football in arena football too with that, and he's got a great quarterback right now. His defense, has been very, very solid. And as we said, that game Friday night is going to be a really, really battle, there. Billings looks strong, obviously coming out, hanging 78, right off the bat and everything. But Washington and Oregon, they're going to grow. They're going to learn from those losses. And as everybody always says, the biggest improvement in anything you do in football is from week 1 to week 2. Okay. Had very limited time in training camps. You're just getting these guys out for the first time. Okay. Some of these guys had never been in an arena before they walked in that place in Corpus Christi Sunday afternoon. They had never been inside of an arena for practicing or nothing. A little bit different game when those walls start howling and screaming at you, and I'm trying to go to catch a pass, and things like that. So we'll see some really, really good improvements here next week and all that. And yeah, it's going to be exciting to see, how things play out.
The game itself in Albany on Friday is kind of a return, so to speak. Southwest Kansas is going to be returning to Albany for the first time since last year in the playoffs. So it's I would imagine it's going to be kind of a revenge game. So I can only imagine, just looking at the offense Southwest Kansas had so far, but especially their defense.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 11 turnovers that they have caused so far just in 2 games?
11 turnovers.
And the amount of pick sixes, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's funny too, because Tim, and you know this, and Scott, you do too. You don't see that a lot in arena football. This game is set up for it to be high scoring and offenses to score points. You know what I mean? It's not set up to, defenses to dominate offenses and there would be 0 points at halftime and, things like that. Even have an opportunity to kick field goals. But you have a lot more now. And I watch the philosophies of some of these coaches, a lot more going forward on 4th down than coaches would have done in the past, because we always used to say, if you got a field goal, you got a half a stop. Okay. If I stop you on 4th down and I score, that's a full gain for me. So now I'm a full stop and a half behind right now. So, it's different with the philosophies that some of these coaches use and how, how they go for things versus kicking and all that. And I kind of like to watch that because I have the old school set walkers, okay, that do things a certain way. I have the Gary Thomases that do things that he's always learned, kind of an indoor type deal. I have Coach Ware who kind of sprinkles it all in. I can't forget Coach Arbette, down in Nashville with what he does. So it's really, really cool to see all the different philosophies of what all my coaches do and everything with that. So it makes it definitely entertaining.
By the way, thanks for the correction this week. Yes, it was Salina who went and played Albany in the playoffs last year. You are correct. I apologize.
So you touched on something that's been a thing for me for years. I think the stop needs to be an official statistic for arena football. That needs to be a special statistic just for this game. Because like you said, that was something that was counted. And you want to talk about who's got the best defense, who's got the most stops. It has nothing to do with yards. It really doesn't even have anything to do with points.
You know what, Scotty, you're really right about that. And and maybe that's something that, we discuss in the off season with that, because like you said, stops are important. I remember Coach Rick Frazier, who coached us in Milwaukee for many, many years. He always told us, if you get a half a stop a quarter, you always have an opportunity at the end of the game to win. And that's true, but that's great, Scott, by that. And I'll definitely I just jotted that down too when you had said it and everything. So we're going to make sure that maybe, and that's how you would justify who's got the best defense. They had 17 and a half stops over the course of a year. Or like, Tim said, they had 11 turnovers and 7 stops in the first 2 games. And so, yeah, so we'll definitely think about that. So that's a good point. So thank you.
So like a kind of like a plus minus turnovers that you're talking about, Scott? Something like that?
Yeah, plus minuses, but specifically, like you said, a field goal's a half stop. Turnover or whatever's a full stop.
Yeah.
And
and it's funny you bring up field goals, because this is one thing I wanted to bring up. And I know, Gary, you have lived through the multitude of changes within the game of arena football. And I find that right now, and I know this changed quite a few years back, probably in the early teens of arena football and stuff like that, the 20 teens. Kicking to me has kind of, depending on where you go, has kind of become an afterthought, especially when it comes to field goals and when it comes to these guys being able to reach the net and being able to use the nets to their advantage. That doesn't seem to be a case in Albany at all. Because Coach Ware seems to know he knows he needs a kicker that can use the nets properly. I'm sure Coach Arbet's going to do the exact same thing too in Nashville. But any thoughts on that too? Because as I said, I was watching the games this past weekend, and I understand your, say it's fourth down, and you're on the 6, and you're back by 10 points. My thought would be, and yes, I know I'm not a coach, but my thought would be at least try and take the 3. Now, mind you, they are having kicking problems. The kicker was having kicking problems on Sunday night, but still, I think it's just how this game has changed, which kind of is taking a lot of points off the board for these teams.
I agree with that because, you used to see 58-yard field goals way back in the day, right? You used to see, and it's not given when you kick a ball and it hits the net and it's no good. What's going to happen? If you're hustling down and the ball hits the net and he messes with it, and once it hits that ground, it's all bets are off, So you are right with that. I'm on my own 6-yard line and I'm going to go for it because maybe I don't have a kicker. I don't get that either, but obviously everybody's got their own philosophy, with that. And maybe you are having kicker issues. And I think maybe, that some of the coaches are in that different mode that have come from different leagues. Okay, as I will just say it. Okay, where a ball is always squibbed or whatever, and not thinking about the kicking game. The kicking game is important in this game. When you get to midfield, and we always said it too. When you get to midfield, it should be an automatic 3 points no matter what. That's the way it should be. You get to midfield, you have 3 points in your bucket right there. But I think a lot of people don't see it that way anymore, and everything else. And I do agree with you, Tim. I think it's an afterthought. With that. But again, but if you have the Bailey Giffins and people like that and stuff, that you can utilize them, it's a different deal. But I think it all goes back to the coaches' philosophies of how they do it.
It's true, but I think to have the availability now of the deuce, we only had our first deuce. I understand it's week 2, but we only just had our first deuce this past week. So, again, it's the kickers. I agree with you, and with there being the different type of kicking for indoor football versus arena football, I get it. But I think. I mean,
you don't see that clay rush leg where the guy could kick it over the nets on every kickoff. You just don't see that right now.
Right. And I don't want to say it, but I will say it. And when you're kicking a different type of football, it makes a difference too. Right, Tim? You know what I mean? It does. Yeah. It absolutely does,
Well, it showed
we saw that last year.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as they got rid of the composite balls, Orozco in Albany was kicking deuces like a madman. Same thing with, I think it was Salina's kicker was kicking them like a madman also, especially in that playoff game. So we saw how some of these, how these games ended. I know that there were been some modifications to the kicking rules. I'm glad they've been pared down. There were just too many, in my opinion. So I was glad that they kept the deuce, even though I'm still on the fence kind of with the deuce. But kicking really has changed. And I said, I kind of agree with you, Gary. It really comes down to the coach, what they've learned in football, indoor football, arena football. But still, in my opinion, I understand kickers are a dime a dozen. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of one, but to be honest, look what happened in the Arena Bowl championship last year with Albany. You lose your kicker. That was huge for
Well, and
Albany not to have a
Oh, it
kicker.
is. You're right.
where
You're
would the soul have
absolutely.
been without Tommy Freevert?
Yeah.
Kicking those onside kicks that no
Yeah.
one could stop. I mean,
Yeah, and I think, and it is. I mean, that's why we have a kicker. That's why we have the rule. If something happens to your kicker, you have a 24-hour rule to get an emergency kicker. Kickers are important to this thing. And not only, as I always say, why just kick the ball down there and let somebody return it when I got an opportunity to let it hit iron and bounce off and it becomes a free football? That's what makes the game unique, the nets and how different things can happen off of these nets and the rules that we have with all of that. So, hopefully we'll see more of that with kickers and everything. Like I said, I think a lot of it's based off everybody's philosophies and, and you had said it too, Tim, and how they do things. But, I do think the kicker is a little bit of a pass, and all that, but hopefully we'll see some good things happening.
I will say the deuce is the reason I like the Uno, because it adds a little risk reward that, hey, you kick the hell out of that ball and then shank it. Well, now you just gave the other team a point. You go under the crossbar because you didn't get quite enough on it, and you gave the other team a point. I like that risk reward with the deuce and the Uno. Now, getting out of the end zone, that can be debated, but within the kickoff game, I like the Uno a lot.
It doesn't exist anymore, so
right. So that's definitely missed though this year.
Yeah. Gary, thoughts on the quarterbacks? As we saw, Washington did struggle last night when it came to the quarterbacks, and I think a couple of teams also throughout the league itself, at least in their first games that they played. What do you really chalk that up? Because as we've seen, very rarely is there preseason football in indoor football in general, not just arena football, but in indoor football in general. There's no really any preseason games. Do you really chalk it up to inexperience in playing versus real football rather than in practice or at camp? Or is there a little bit more when it comes to the different type of quarterbacks that we have playing in the AF1?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly, and it goes into, you practice outside, okay? You don't have the confines of an arena. You're maybe not going 100%. You're not tackling. There are no walls. I'm throwing this ball to the cone, and I think that's great and all of that. And the guy runs through the cone 3 or 4 yards, but that's a wall there. I think getting inside is very, very important. We all know that and everything else, and it's hard to do that with these arenas because there's so many things going on. But I think a lot of, I'll say maybe inexperience right now, okay? I watched like I said, the Salina Corpus Christi game last night from the end zone, and I could tell a guy coming out of motion 4 yards if he was going to be open or not right off the bat. But these guys, and again, that's different to me saying that than this quarterback. But I think sometimes they are quick to jump the gun. I think because you're seeing a lot more dual threat type guys. Okay, if things aren't there immediately, I'm gone. And that's good and bad too, because as I always say it, if I don't move my jack out of the box and I spy you, you really ain't got nowhere to go. That's just how how it's always been in this game. Now, if the jack gets out of the box and you go, that's a little bit different, So I think the quarterback play's been up and down. Like I said, we haven't seen a whole lot. We're going to see Albany, okay, for the first time this weekend, and that'll be great to kind of see Sam. We all know about Sam's background, and everything to kind of see what he does against Gary's defense. Okay, so that'll be interesting to see. And, I'm sure there's some coaches out there that are looking at making quarterback changes, and everything. So I think a lot of it is just trying to gather the experience and, the play calling. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in an arena, right? It's loud. Music's going on. Coach is talking to me. I'm having to process all this stuff that, we're on a practice field and it's very quiet, right? Coach tells me a play. I go out there. We just run the play and do whatever. So I think it's just getting inside the confines there and, having that experience.
Yeah.
So to add to that, you're talking about philosophies earlier. We have a handful of teams that the quarterbacks shotgun every play, which is very non-traditional arena football. I think there's a lot of philosophy. We've talked about this a couple times now, Tim. But what do you think, Gary? What's your thought on the shotgun in this game?
To be honest with you, I come from the old school regime of underneath center and all that. I just think, now coaches are different with their philosophies, and I could talk my game of how it is, and it's totally different than what they do. It just seems like to me that in a shotgun, taking a snap and a ball coming to me and somebody coming in high motion, the metrics are just off. It's hard for me to believe I can take a ball, I can take that snap. He's running a 6-yard hitch route. I can take that ball, gather it, step, throw the ball. Just me. Okay. But a lot of coaches do things differently out of the shotgun. Okay. They're running a lot more of this zone read type thing and reading things. They're playing play action off of that, as you see in the outdoor game a little bit more with that. However, when you're in a 27 1/4 wide field, there ain't a whole lot, maneuvering going on there. So again, I think it's the philosophies, but I think it's what fits in. We all know right now, kids starting in 4th grade, okay, everything's out of a shotgun. There is nobody that goes underneath. Unless you're running the option, there's nobody that goes underneath center anymore. That's almost an obsolete, type thing. That's why they always say all these quarterbacks that go to the combine and how much they struggle when they have to be underneath center, because they're not used to that. So, I just think it's a little bit different in how it's all done.
I kind of agree with that too. I have noticed a difference in play last year versus this year, especially for some of the teams that's there. I'll give Salina as an example. They're a lot more run oriented. I think it's actually changed once the coach gets to know the game of arena football. While it does seem that it has changed when it comes to the quarterbacks under center, Scott, if you think about it, look at some of the other leagues. The league that is the most similar in style to the arena football game is the CFL with the waggle or the man in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the time, unless they're on a short yardage play, the quarterbacks in the CFL are from the shotgun because it opens a little up. Now I get it. It's a lot bigger field, et cetera, et cetera. But it's funny to see how quickly, how much these two leagues mimic each other. But I think, as I was saying before about as Salina and their coaching staff, they've gotten used to the nuances of the arena football game. And I think because do you agree with me, Scott? There's been less running in the first two weeks of the AF1 this season.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, it showed in that playoff game with Salina in Albany. They put up big points that game because he changed his philosophy. It was a clear change for that playoff game, and that was why they were able to keep up with Albany in that game.
Yeah, it's.
I agree.
And again, too. Everybody evolves the game. Okay, we all know because the game of football, is evolving every day. But as I always say, arena football was built on something, and the Tim Markhams and the Mike Hohensies and the Coach Dailies, as I flip that over to, Coach Arbett and Coach Walkers and everything, there's just something about old school football. Not to say that all the other coaches, are doing anything wrong, and I'm not saying who's right or wrong. It just seems like there's things that fit and things that don't. Just again, why would I take a Kyler Murray and put him underneath center every single time at the size he is? I want to get him in the shotgun. I want to get him where he can open up. I want to develop things for him. And I think that's what a lot of coaches think about too with their quarterbacks. Hey, if my guy gets in trouble, he's got an outlet, So everybody's got all their different philosophies. At the end of the year in July, at the championship, we'll be able to see who did right and who did wrong, right?
Oh, for sure. We were talking quickly before, and I don't know which segment you want to go to next, Scott, but I want to ask, obviously you're in Corpus Christi this past week. Gary, are you planning on being at any of the games this next week?
No. So we will not, Jerry and them were just out on the West Coast at Washington, this past weekend. I would like to get to the Albany game, but I've been on the road. I've been traveling, seeing family, bouncing all over the place. I think if I don't stay home, my wife may start changing the door locks, so I may stay home this weekend. However, if Jerry is listening, Jerry, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. But yeah, we'll hopefully be able to, stay home and be able to catch that game Friday night and sit back and, be able to watch that and analyze it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Looking at the schedule too, you mentioned this earlier, but Salina has this week off. Their next game is back at Corpus again. It's going to be very interesting to see what adjustments Coach O'Neill does it by week 3.
Yeah,
because I guarantee it won't be the same team that we saw this last week.
I promise you that, and I've already had the conversation. I had the conversation with Coach O'Neill before I got on a plane to get to even leave Corpus Christi this morning, because obviously they bust back last night. Was already calling me, and Coach O'Neill get it right. His staff is great. He's not a legend in this game for nothing. He knows what it takes and everything. So yeah, he'll get it right. A lot of times you think you have the pieces, and then all of a sudden I go to turn that car over and that car won't start, and I built it just like I thought I built it, but I didn't build something right with it. So now I got to figure it out.
And honestly, same thing we said about Nashville. And same thing you said about Nashville. They've got Albany as their next game in week 3, so they have 2 weeks off for our bet of all coaches to restructure what didn't work right in that first game. So week 3 is actually really kind of jumping out at me. That's really going to, I think, when we'll see what these teams actually have.
Yeah, I think so, because everybody's going to, like you said, those that have struggled is going to kind of have those bye weeks in there. Teams are going to have those bye weeks to, regroup. I mean, Nashville got a late start and, I was in camp 1 week and then having to travel, doing what all they had to do with Coach Arbet and all of that. So, yeah, I think from week 3 on, you'll really start to see how it transforms here. And I'm excited about it, because I think it's going to be great with all of that. I think we'll see some surprises, and I'm waiting to start seeing quarterbacks throwing 9 touchdowns a game, receivers catching 7 touchdowns a game. And, we're not having 7 picks a game and all this, that, and the other. We're putting up big time points, and because that's what the game was built around. But, hey, hats off to the defenses right now. The defenses are winning, that's for sure.
Well, I can admit, too, is that you look at obviously a lot of the games in week 0 and week 1, some of the first halves weren't that exciting, but I will admit a lot of the second halves, whether it be week 0 or this past week, they were a ton better, because they were able to make the adjustments, and maybe they had to make the change at whether at one of the positions or whatever. But I was really impressed with the second half football these past 2 weeks, really, than a lot of the first half football that I saw.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial for any coach to, be able to make those halftime adjustments and, obviously figuring out what's not working to get it fixed, especially on the defensive side. Okay, if you're struggling that way. Offensive side, you got to figure out what's working, and everything. So, yeah, I thought the second halves have been a lot better. And maybe that's guys getting in the groove a little bit, maybe a little bit more, too, like you said. You got some teams that just, this was their first game, okay, and everything. So, and like Sky said, I think as we get to week 3, week 4, and we really start hitting that pinnacle at 8, 9, 10, and really starting to see, what we have this year, absolutely.
We know there were some minor issues when it came to, or the couple of changes when it came to the schedule itself. It's not really a schedule question itself, Gary, because I know you guys in the headquarters really worked your ass off when it came to making sure that these, that you're able to put together a full schedule for most of these teams, whether they are playing the 10, 11, or 12 games, whichever it may be. You were talking about bye weeks before. You played at a time where bye weeks really were not a thing. How tough do you find it? Like, as an example, for Nashville, they played a game, then they had 2 weeks off, and then they're playing another game. For some of these teams, and obviously it's not really, it's really out of their control because of what was available for these arenas.
Mm-hmm.
But being a former player, do you find that the bye weeks could potentially hurt a game? Because as I said, they're not really playing a game per se. They're playing outdoors, they're practicing outdoors, et cetera, et cetera. How much of a detriment do you think that these bye weeks are to these teams so early in the season? Because I think it kind of evens out for the rest of the year. But what are your thoughts on how on the bye weeks? Again, not necessarily the schedule because it is what it is, but on the bye weeks themselves.
Yeah, I think for an expansion team, okay, or someone that's new, I would almost, as I told Coach Arbet when I was down in Nashville with him, and I went down there and visited for a week with him, and I told him, I said, you treat this first game like a preseason game because you have 2 weeks off and you can regroup yourself, and it's almost like you having an extended training camp to really kind of know what you have. But it can't hurt you. Okay, with that, we all know how bye weeks are, and as a player, you get into a routine. You know what you have day after day. To get to your question, Tim, I would love to have bye weeks back when I played with the way that I played and all that. I'd love to have a week off to be able to recoup a little bit, But we all know they don't build them tough like they used to anymore and all of that. And we have so many, guys that, all are on one side of the football now and everything. But I think, with it, it's good and bad. I'd almost like to, if I'm a coach like Coach Thomas, get 3 or 4 games in and then have a bye week. I kind of know where I sit instead of having my buys early and then I kind of string it along. But I think for some of them, it's good. I think they need it, and everything. But it's kind of, coach's preference, because we all know in a bye week with the guys, what do you do with them? I know some coaches practice them 2 or 3 days. Some will let them go home for 3 or 4 days and bring them back. So you just have to make sure whatever you're doing and your philosophy as a coach, that it's right and how you want to handle it.
And actually, good question, because this is something I think that has not been talked about this year. What are the league rules when it comes to practicing per week, practicing in pads, et cetera, et cetera? Because it's not really information that's really well known to fans, really, for the AF1.
Right. And, there's really nothing set. Okay. It's not set, like a high school, it's 20 hours a week, this, that, and the other. I mean, let's just, we're going to take a fan right now. We're going to walk them through a typical week. Okay. I'm going to play on a Saturday night. Okay. So Monday, I'm probably bringing my guys in. We're going to probably do film. Okay. We may lift some weights. Okay. I'm going to practice probably Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, I'm going to clean up Thursday. And what I mean by clean up is my game plan's in. So I'm going to kind of go over all of that. And then Friday, what we do is a walkthrough. Nobody knows what a walkthrough is. You kind of go through in the arena, okay, because usually the arenas are set up. Some aren't, so you have to go outside. But you go through all your steps and you go through all your scenarios and every special teams there are, and you cover every aspect of that. We all know now with players and everything else and coaches, not a lot of people go full pads anymore. Okay, shoulder pads are on realistically probably Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they're probably off. Again, it's not like it used to be, way back in the 70s, where it was full bore, pads every single day, 3 or 4 hours a day and all that, because that's just not how it operates anymore. Again, what is your philosophy as a coach? Okay, what do I need to do to make sure my team is ready? Okay. Some coaches I know would not go pads the first 2 days, put pads on Thursday to really give an hour and a half, 90 minutes of good work, and then take them off Friday for the walkthrough. So it's all different with that.
Okay. That makes sense. By the way, to answer this week, I will be in Albany, not this week, but I'll be there for the first Billings game.
So with that too, in the past, if I remember correctly, the teams weren't allowed to practice on bye weeks in the previous AFL because the players weren't getting paid.
Correct.
On those weeks.
Correct. So the way we have it stipulated and the way we have it worked is, there's compensation for them. I won't get into all of that, but that allows them, to practice and everything. And I think it's more of just, again, what do you want to do? What do your players want to do? I mean, if I'm a player and it's a bye week and it's early on, I'm really not wanting to go home. I'm wanting to stay. Okay, if it's week 8 or 9 and I haven't seen my family in 8 weeks or whatever, I probably want to go home, But, so we didn't really take, well, if it's a bye week, it's an off week, you can't practice. try to take those handcuffs off a little bit. Obviously, because, we're trying to set something up here and we're trying to make things successful and trying to utilize every source that we have, to be able to do that.
Well, and it's rough on the players too when you don't make that much to begin with. To hey, now you're not going to make anything this week, so just to give them even a stipend on the bye weeks makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, Gary kind of let us and the fans know something that we didn't know. From a slight modification that at least they're getting some sort of compensation, as you said. So Gary can't go into the details as he said, but at least we now know there are been some slight modifications to the rules when it comes to teams on bye week. So,
and in talking about rules and everything, I know we brought this up. Scott did, the elimination of the 3 and 4 point rule, and what different strategies that it takes for a coach, and and the wheelhouse spinning in your head in the third quarter of what all I'm doing. And we just thought it was best to pull it out, to go back to the old way it was, 1 point, 2 points and all of that, still keep the deuce in, as you had said, took the Uno out and all that, try to stay traditional with that. But I know as a coach, I want to know, I still want to know I have that opportunity, to gain those points. But we talked about it from an ownership group. And then we let the ownership group out and we talked about it as a coaching staff, and we came up with a decision. So it wasn't a decision. The league came in and they said this, there was a unity of people talking and discussing this, and how you wanted to do things and what you guys wanted to do. And that was, the solution that we came up with.
So along those lines, how did the Ironman come into play, or lack of Ironman, I guess in this case? Was that much of a discussion?
You know what? Yes, it was. I'm a full component of Ironman football. I just think that.
No, really, Gary, really,
right. I just think that's what this game was built on, and and everything else. But again, we all know how the game has changed, and players are so specialized. Okay. Now that doesn't mean if I'm a coach, I can't build my team in an Ironman situation. You can do whatever you want to do, okay, because it's free substitution. But I just think too, with people being specialized and all of that, I think it makes a little bit of a difference. But I like to see the guy run down and score a touchdown, and he's talking to everybody, and then he's got to flip over and play DB. And what do? They go right at him and they score a touchdown on him, and everything else. That's what makes it fun. But, like I said, they're all specialized now. It's free substitution. Again, it's a philosophy of how a coach wants to use it. I saw Corpus Christi last night using their fullback linebacker on both sides of the football. They are utilizing them some in the heavies, or what they call lions, tigers, and bears formations, and all of this stuff, using them on both sides. But I always like to see the Iron Man, but hey, it is what it is with that. I guess it's a ghost of Christmas past, I guess, as we should say, with everything. But it'll always be in my book, and almost about every football I own, it says Wilson Ironman on it or something. And that's just what it was. But, again, these players are specialized in so many different ways nowadays, and all of that. It's just, it would probably be very hard to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think Southwest Kansas did the exact same thing too. They were using a guy going both ways last night, if I remember correctly, and he was doing damn good. So
yeah. You find that, and the thing of it is too, and you think about that, you find that guy that can do that. What that does is that opens up you another roster spot.
That's true.
And so there again, it's the mindset, it's the philosophy of how can I utilize my roster to get the most of what I need. And I don't think you see too much of it anymore of the wide receiver DBs, okay, as you do the fullback linebackers, and all of that, or maybe the linemen a little bit, because you always got to have that defensive lineman or that offensive lineman that can play both ways in case they get hurt. A lot of receivers I see nowadays, they couldn't cover, in this game. They could not do that just because, they're specialized on one other, different sides. But it'd be kind of neat, to kind of see that, but I don't think we'll ever get to it again.
Now, to answer the questions from Brandon and from Edward in the chat, when it comes to streaming service and Vice and Evergreen, all games that are not on the Game of the Week on Vice will be broadcast on Evergreen now. It's a separate app from YouTube. It's so far 2 weeks in, they've done a great job. No glitches in any way, shape, or form. And again, like it would be with YouTube, the stuff is going to be on demand. The Vice thing is, I know that some guys are questioning some things in the US. Being able to find it, it's even tougher for me up here. Trust me, I know. But I was able to get it. But there is a Game of the Week for Vice every week. And they're also going to be having it. They will be, looks like, including all the postseason games leading up to the AF1 championship game. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
the cheapest I found in the US was $7.99 for HD stream on a app called Friendly, FRNDLY, I believe is what it was. So it's like $7.99 a month. So it's not horrible. Definitely not the kind of paywall for low grade streams for sure.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So I actually have a question for a rule that happened in game.
Yep.
I believe it was in the Southwest Kansas game. There's a pass interference in the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
Put the ball on the 2. It was a deep pass, very deep pass. I don't remember exactly how long. It wasn't. They didn't say intentional pass interference, which, as far as I know, that's still a thing. But should that have only been a 10-yard, or was the 2 the correct?
You know what, Scott, with that, because I have not reviewed all of their breakdowns of their calls yet. So, and I'm going to get into that next, and I think we ought to cover that because I think this will be good for everybody in an explanation. But I have not covered everything that was broken down and what the call was and where it went. So I can't answer your question yet with that, okay? It could have been a mistake, okay? And it could have been called wrong, or it could have been called right and the ball was placed wrong. You know, I don't know with that. But kind of leading into that, Dave Chesney, who is a longtime AFL official for many, many years, is our new director of officiating. And Dave has 74 AF1 referees that we are utilizing this year. And Dave is on a call with them on Mondays and Tuesdays for whoever's calling the games. They have an hour-long conference call with that, getting everybody ready and up to date on everything. Then also, after he does all of that, he stays in touch with them all week long. And then when the game is over, they submit to him and I and Mr. Kurz a full detailed list of everything in the game, from the time they got there, who they spoke to, locker rooms, where they fed, do they have water, whatever it may be. And then it lists all of their calls, okay? Then Dave Chesney, he takes all of that and he goes back through every game film and he watches all those calls and he corrects them and sends out a huge detailed list that then him and I cover. So what we're doing is, teaching them as well, because you have some that are new, you have some that that know the game, but also learning as we move forward and making sure that we don't make the same calls twice. Correction, I know everybody said, the first week the umpire, he was 7 yards deep, okay, in the box. Me as a former Jack, I would have loved that if I could get somebody to be 7 yards deep. But, and we had to correct him on that, and he wasn't thinking, and, they moved him up and that got corrected this week. So we get those corrections done with them, but there's a lot that goes into that with Dave and what he does with our officials. And putting the umpire back in the box this year, I think is very important because it eliminates a lot of the games being played by the defensive linemen, and and all of that, to be able to see that. So Dave's done a great job with that, and we continue, like I said, to clean up the officiating. I thought last night, without answering, your call again, because I don't know, I talked to Jerry Kurz. He thought they did a phenomenal job there with the way that they did everything. That's just a hat off to Dave and our officiating crews and all that.
Was it the Southwest Kansas game, Scott, or was it the other one earlier in the week? I thought it was the Oregon game that you were asking that question about, because
it could have been. I thought it was Southwest Kansas, because I thought it was on D.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, it's usually a 10-yard. There are no spot fouls in the arena football, right?
Yeah.
Intentional
You know?
pass interference.
Yeah.
That's what it. So that's what he called was intentional pass interference, and then the ball was spotted. Is that because, like I said,
I just wasn't sure if that rule still existed. I know that was a very rarely called rule in the old AFL, the intentional pass interference spot foul.
Yeah, no, because man, if it was a spot foul, these games would have been 5.5 hours long because they'd have just been moving the ball everywhere, right? But I tell you what I'll do, Scott, is I'll find that part of it, and I'll get to it, watch it, or whatever, and I'll send you an explanation of it. I'll send both of you the explanation of it, so you know. Absolutely.
Let's say the other one I think that we had noticed there was it the Billings game that took a little extra long, and then somebody made the comment that they were stopping the clock much more frequently than expected.
There was a clock operator issue there in Oregon, absolutely. That they got that fixed and everything, but now not to stop the clock because we all know with this game you can't do that. That clock's going to continuously run up until that 1 minute timing. And the biggest thing too that everybody's got to understand, and I'm catching this and I'm seeing this a little bit more, is with the play clocks. Play clocks at 35, as soon as the ball's down and all that, that play clock goes. We're not waiting on a ref to set the ball and everything else. It's going because they understand that. So, and I thought over the last course of the last couple of weeks, I thought everybody's done a great job with that. But yeah, I think there was an issue with the clock there in Oregon. Don't know the whole details of it, but I know they got all that fixed, I believe, and everything there because it did go a little bit long as we were talking about that as well.
Somebody brought up too, and if I remember correctly, I think I'm going to answer this correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, Gary. They have brought back it's a slight of a modification rule under 1 minute that if a team is leading by an X amount of points, then they do have to, and somebody has a team that is leading that has the ball, they do have to gain positive yards unless they're at a certain score, the two teams agree, and then they can kneel the ball to end the game.
Kneel the ball and just let it run. Yes, that is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think that was a question that came up there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a good compromise from the old rule of it hard. You have to gain one because it's a 30-point blowout. There's no reason to implement that.
Scott, any move away from the 2019 rule of the 30-second timing rules, I'm just happy about it in general. So because that was ridiculous.
Right, absolutely, 100%.
Well, and you mentioned the play clock, and that's actually been one of my pet peeves with some of these indoor leagues that I've followed over the years. Is the clock will run and run and run, and we'll take them 35 seconds to set the ball, and then they start the play clock for another 35 seconds. Yeah, I'll talk about just eating into your game of just there's no plays in a quarter when you do that.
No, not at all. And and we all know too, the only time that the play clock should be reset is if the ref gives you a reset. That's the only time it should ever be done. So yeah, because you're right about that. You're taking that's like a minute, gone right there if you do that. Yeah, then there's no plays and all that. Absolutely. So
I definitely went to CIF games that had a full minute between plays, and it drove me absolutely nuts. Oh yeah, it was horrible.
It's 35-25, right, Gary, when it comes to setting the ball for regular play clock and then penalty?
Yes, correct.
Okay. 35-25.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. For some people are asking some questions here. One was, I know they're asking about your cap. I'd love your cap too, but I do know, as I noticed yesterday, that if you head over to Royal Retros, which is the official league sponsor, partner, that they do have all team merchandise, and I think it's been put up very recently, league logo merchandise. So that is now available there. Hats not yet. And it's a question that you and I think we talked about pre-show, Gary, about game balls being available over on the Big Game USA website. Gary's going to get us some more information. But I would imagine, because I want one too, unless you can catch one at the game. That's the best way of getting one, obviously.
There you go.
But they'll look into it, and then we'll make sure that we, either myself or Scott, will let you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim, do you want to put out your promo code since We don't have one here, so may as well use
Sure,
yours.
why not? Why not? It's not really the Scott's show, but anyways, if you go to Royal Retros and use the code FlightDeck, FlightDeck at checkout, you'll save 10% off your order. So,
Yeah, make sure you get to that website and look at a lot of what's on there. There's some really, really cool color schemes of, all of your favorite teams and all of that. And if you don't have a favorite team and, you just like the league itself, please, purchase any league merchandise, wear it, tell all your friends about it, everybody like that, because we're trying to grow. We want our fans to grow with us and everything. So yeah, please do that.
I saw a league logo backpack. I was like, excuse me, what? They have glassware this year through Royal Retros, so you can get your favorite team on a pint glass, on a beer stein, which is cool. And I'm sure they'll be adding more stuff, as they said. I would love Gary's hat too, in black, but I would love Gary's hat also. But they don't offer that yet. But this week, by the way, every team does technically have their own ball. Technically, obviously, the TransFinder logo is on all game balls. But if they have a particular team sponsor, like I think it was Southwest Kansas that showed theirs off this week. Southwest they will have their sponsor and logo on that ball on another one of the panels also.
Correct. Every team has their own logo on their ball. Okay, they'll either have their logo on their ball with a sponsor, or it'll just be their logo on there. It kind of makes it unique, and everything. Because hey, you could. The kind of the difference of it is and you get this too is if you're playing at home, the home team is responsible for all the football. So I don't want everybody to think, oh, well, if Nashville's playing at Corpus Christi, I might have a chance to catch a Nashville Cat ball. That is not the way it is, because the home team utilizes all the footballs, but they're unique. They're really, really cool. And Tim, like you said, I'll get with Josh and see about getting those up, up on the website, like for our fans again, and everybody that's watching and listening to take advantage of that. And be able to get you an official, AF1 football, because they're really, really neat.
Yeah, do they use I remember the whole thing last year when it came to switching from the composite to the Wilson balls that they ended up using last year. Are they're still using game balls, and they have a dedicated K ball this year? I'm just asking because I don't know. No,
there's not. So obviously, well, there is, I guess, yes and no with that. The kickers can dedicate their own ball. Okay, and I noticed down in with the kicker from Corpus, the ball was a little bit more beat up, than the regular ball, and we're telling a lot of them that people don't understand, you just don't take these balls out. I mean, we're talking this genuine leather football, and if you look at the NFL, it's a dark brown football, and it just doesn't come that way. There's conditioning and there's mudding and there's all this stuff that gets that ball that way. And all of our teams are utilizing all of that stuff as well to get that more tackified, more worn-in feeling than back in the day where you used to take them out of the wrapper, put them in a bag, stick them in a dryer, beat them up, type thing with that. So yeah, it's a great football. Very, very, happy with it, with the way that it turned out, and definitely they did a great job for us.
And you know what? Now that you've mentioned that every team has their logo on a ball, it's like Pokemon. You got to get them all. And that would be, to be able to get an entire set of 8 will be very, very interesting. If somebody can pull that one off, please, send Scott and me and the league something on social, because if you can complete that set, props to whoever you are. I will.
Yeah,
my money. My money's on Chris Becker. That guy seems to catch a ball everywhere he goes. So, something Titus touched on last week, where I was getting a question here is, when are we going to know about the championship game? What's it going to be called, and what are the details behind that we have at this point?
Obviously, still working on what the game would be called, okay, and everything else. We'll go back to the old format, highest seed, okay, unless there was to be some, big potential sponsor that wanted to utilize it. And we all know that money talks, okay, and that, our management group would be open ears to hear what it would be. But you want to get it back to the highest seed. I mean, that's really the way that it's been. That's why you fight all year long to play and to get that and play in front of your home fans. Because a lot of people will say, well, if you take it somewhere else and nobody knows about the game, there's no crowd, there's no nothing. and everything else. But if you play it at home in front of your own fans, everybody comes. Different fans are going to come because maybe they want to experience that, or maybe they're one ball away from, completing their set, and they want to have an opportunity, with that. So I think that is the way that it should be. Again, I know the management group is working on names and different things of that and what it'll be called. That will be the weekend of July the 11th through the 13th. Big festivities happening with that, as well as we begin to work on things. And I'm not going to go into details with that yet, kind of leave all that out there. But it'd be a great time, to end our first year, with our championship.
I didn't hate the mall. The mall wasn't that bad. I thought it was a pretty good time out there.
I tell you what, Scott, it wasn't that bad once the game started.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Just figuring out all the logistics of how this is supposed to happen. But, hey.
Oh, shrinking the nets because the nets didn't fit like normal.
Correct. Hey, as I call Jerry Kurz the godfather of arena football. He's always got away with all of that, and not just him, and everybody helped with that. But yeah, that was unique because you had the light coming in from the top, and you kind of had an outside feel, a little bit of it, and I mean, in between kickoffs and scoring a touchdown, you could go to Foot Locker, get you a pair of shoes, Orange Julius, get you a drink, and you could come right back and continue to watch the game, So yeah, hey, we pulled it off and everything else. It was unique, but still would like to have it there at the, with the home team and everything to cap off the year.
It was neat. I know I wasn't able to go, but I can only imagine because, if anybody watched the broadcast, it went from the sunlight there coming through the sunroof itself, and then it started to get darker and darker, and you could tell the difference on TV and stuff like that. The sight lines were just okay, but it kind of gave vibes. I think, Gary, you would get more of this than I would, than Scott would. Is that kind of gave vibes of the old games that were played at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, where they opened the roof for a couple of games, or that infamous, Scott, you would remember this one, where they had played the outdoor game in Spokane.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
My kids were at that game, actually, funny enough.
Oh, wow. Really?
I wasn't there, but my kids were. My kids were visiting some family up in Coeur d'Alene there, so they got to go.
That's cool. There's been a lot of unique, settings. I mean, there really has, but still, I think the ultimate deal of it is the highest seed team with all their fans, because you're going to sell it out, everybody's coming and all of that, and it just gives you a whole week, and even it'll be, even with that, the whole week to have all the festivities and everything else, and just like I said, it'll be a great moment.
Yeah, there have always been pluses and minuses to having a neutral site game. I will admit, from the many games that I've been to, but as you've said too, Gary, I think it's kind of like the old days where the teams who had the best record deserve to have the championship game, but also it doesn't stop the league from getting those major sponsors to be the major presenting sponsor of the AF1 championship game, whoever it may be. So there's a good and a bad side of it, but I mean, I think personally, I think it's being done right. I think they do that. The teams do deserve to have the championship at their home arena, especially if they do have the highest seed. I agree.
Record. Yeah, I agree 100%. Absolutely.
Anything decided on playoffs yet in terms of how many get in, or?
We'll stay with 6. We're going to stay with the 6 teams. Okay, you'll have the 6 teams there. You'll have, with that, you'll have probably the 2 buys, 3 play 6, 4 play 5. Okay, then have that, and then, with the remaining seeds, and do it that way. Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's important to get that 1 or 2 seed. Less game you got to play and still have an opportunity to play it at your home.
Very CFL-esque, actually. Very CFL playoff-esque.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're saying if the season ended right now, Albany would be out?
That's a good one, huh?
Let's say,
I don't know,
don't ask Coach.
anybody-
Don't ask Coach Ware that question.
Yeah, I was starting to say anybody from Albany listening, they'll get that. They'll get that back to them, right?
Oh, they have ears everywhere. I know those
yeah.
Albany guys.
Yeah.
I know that we have games coming up this week. I mean, as I said, it seems to be that the league has, in my opinion, uh, especially with what I went through last year with the AFL, is that despite the some hiccups, that the league seems to be going in the right direction. I'm glad to see that the games that were scheduled to be played uh, were played. Everybody who had, despite, as I said, despite a few hiccups, I'm very happy, Gary, and what's been happening with the league so far. For you being in the league HQ and dealing with Commish Fish and dealing with Uncle Jerry and all the rest of your crew there, what is one of the things that you have noticed that has stood out to you the most, no matter what it may be, that has stood out to you the most that you've noticed so far within this 2025 season, despite some of the hiccups that you've run into?
I think it's the support, honestly. We all know, like I just said earlier, things happen and all of that, but, we're all one big family. We're all supporting each other to be successful. We all wear the logo and the brand for the reason that we do. And you don't want any partners to ever feel like, they're not involved in things and they're not taken care of. So the support that we give, and not only us giving support to teams, but just the support that Christy gives to Jerry and Jerry gives to me and I give to Jeff and Jeff gives to the teams and all of that is second to none. We're a very tight-knit unit. And like I said, and Adam and, and I don't want to forget anybody, but we're a very tight-knit unit and we all help each other in anything. We pick up the phone and we talk, sometimes 11 o'clock at night, about things or whatever. Commissioner Fisher's calling in the morning, wanting to throw something and bounce something off, or, Jerry's calling us and all that. So I think the support that we have and the bond that we have together for this thing, and we want to make sure that it does what it's supposed to because of the passion that we have for everything that's happened, in the past and, everything that we've seen grow throughout the years, I think is the most important thing.
And by the way, me calling Jerry Uncle Jerry, it's not a bad term. It's a term. It's a respectful term. Trust me. If you have to even be listening, Jerry, it's respectful. We've known each other.
My kids
for a long
literally
time,
call him
so.
Uncle Jerry. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, is there anything else, Scott, you want to talk to Gary about? I know we've been talking about an hour and 40, and we
go a little bit.
Again, every time I've had you on, Gary, whether it was over at Arena Fan or here, I love talking to you. You and Steve the past 2 weeks have been just so transparent about what is happening within the AF1, and so far through 2 weeks, again, I've been very impressed. I think, Scott, I can't speak for you, but I would imagine you would say the same. But anything else you wanted to? I don't know if where you wanted to go, which segment, or how you wanted to go with this, Scott.
No, like I said, we've been on for a good minute, and I don't want to take up too much of either one of your all's time. It's been great in the last 2 weeks, and I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the season and seeing who can get on here and the games. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I told you guys beforehand, there's nothing to hide. Okay, like you said, transparent as it is. Tell you what's happening and all of that, speak from the heart with it because, we're so passionate about it. That's the thing, that's the transparency that we show with all of that. And Tim, like you said, the hiccups and everything else. And absolutely, that's happened, but you grow from that. And, somebody that experienced a downfall can only rise to the top knowing that experience. Okay. And, and I love it too, because I have all these coaches quotes and, everything. And, I shoot these to my kids and all that, but it's just how I am. I'm very passionate about this game. And like I told y'all, I don't care what type of AFL logo it is, an AF1 logo and all that. This game was what brought me to where I am. And and I thank you guys for it and all the media people, and everything. And anytime you guys need me on anything that you need, I'm here. You just give me a call and never say no. Absolutely.
That's greatly appreciated for sure.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so, Gary. Yeah. When people call you the GOAT or use the emoji, 100%, my friend. 100%.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. Gary, if you wouldn't mind hanging on for a couple, we'll exit this out. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Tim. As always, it's a pleasure, and we'll have to do this again next week. So, all right, until then, we will see you then. Enjoy the games this week, everyone.